left, right.
Yo, what's up? I appreciate you guys joining this podcast. Always important to me to see you guys here, see you guys in the comments, and see you guys subscribing. But today, we are talking about the food and beverage industry. Do you like to eat food? Do you eat food? Do you serve food? Do you prepare food? Someone told me you eat food. But if you go to restaurants, if you go to bars, you need to understand that the food and beverage industry is changing. And I think over the next decade, it's going to look vastly different than it does today when it comes to automation, when it comes to AI, when it comes to takeout food, when it comes to health, regulation, and safety. Things are changing. They're changing fast. So listen to this episode. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think we missed. And let me know your opinion in the comments. And if you have not already, please subscribe to the podcast. It's just me and my co-host James that do the podcast. We got Rosh, who hooks us up on the back end, helps us produce the podcast. But really, outside of that, it's just us. So we truly, the three of us, appreciate you guys subscribing and interacting with the podcast. It helps us grow and makes us feel good deep down inside. So thank you for being there, and I'll see you on the other end and see you guys soon. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
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 All right. I think that popping of the bottle means that we're online. Welcome, everyone, to episode 134 of Sip Talk. My name is Justin DiGiulio out of my basement in New Jersey. I'm joined by James, the Boswell Boswell, out of sunny South Carolina. James is a philosopher, a bartender, a professional referee, and an accountant. On that note, James, how's it going?
Things are going pretty well down here. It's finally starting to cool off a little bit in South Carolina. No more days where it's 90 to 95 degrees. Now it's just at 85.
But is the humidity still there?
Oh, of course it is.
Oh yeah, we got a big wave of humidity last couple of days over here, and some serious rain. Let me ask you first. I heard a can crack open. What are you drinking?
You got one guess.
I'm gonna go with the Busch Ice.
Yeah, you got it right. I got something else to follow up on it, but starting off with Busch Ice.
I got a little 18-year-old Glenfiddich. That's it's been hanging out here for a while, so I figured it's been time to open it up. So
It's a good bottle.
Last few days, it's gotten some fresh air. But speaking of the humidity and the rain, dude, last night I was driving home, and I'm in the pickup truck, which is, not the sportiest of vehicles. And I hit this crazy monsoon. And, luckily I had a little rain X on the windshield from a couple of weeks ago, so it wasn't terrible. But there were points you couldn't see anything. And the windshield started to fog up a little bit. I turned the heat on, full blast. The fog is rolling back in the windshield. I got the window cracked open because I got the heat on the windshield. And I'm driving along doing, 45 miles an hour or so. And the wind is just whipping across the road. It's coming down really, really fucking hard. And all of a sudden, I just get this crazy feeling. My ears popped, total change in pressure. I'm thinking to myself, fuck, because we're in the middle, we're in it. We're not in the middle of it like, the eye of the hurricane or anything, but we're in the middle of it. I'm thinking we're about to get hit by a fucking tornado. Some scary shit. I don't know how the rain has been down where you are, but up here we've been getting some pretty wild weather.
Charleston's really streaky with its weather. Like, it gets into a pattern and then it just kind of stays there for a long time. So earlier this month, we were in a rainy pattern for like a week and a half or 2 weeks where it would rain like almost every single day. But now we've kind of settled into this high pressure pattern, and it's just staying pretty dry, although I think we're supposed to get a little bit of rain later on this week. Does your truck not have AC?
No, there's no AC in this truck. This is my beat up old pickup truck. Hi, Craig in Orlando. What's up in Orlando? Yeah, man. But the weather's getting more severe. They're saying we're going to be getting these 100-year storms every 10 years or so. And the storms that we've been having lately, I have noticed have been pretty damn intense. But that was some scary shit. I was trying to figure out, should I pull over? Should I try to power through it? I didn't know, but it was pretty wild. All right. So let's get on topic here. James, your mic is exceptionally good. I like that note.
And then no change in settings. All I did was plug in the same USB that I always do.
All right. You get a USB mic?
It's the headset plugs in USB.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Okay. So today we're talking about the food and beverage industry. You had some thoughts on it changing because of automation, things like that, changing because of coronavirus. Am I pretty accurate on that?
Yeah, I watched a video last night. There's a YouTube channel called Alpha Investments, and it's a guy that does a lot of investing in the trading card world, like Magic the Gathering cards, but also Pokemon Flesh and Blood, various like video games, basically a whole bunch of collectibles. The dude who runs the channel was originally in finance in, I think, Wall Street, but if not Wall Street, then in finance somewhere else, working for a hedge fund, and eventually got out of that and started running his own card shop and investing in collectibles. So he's got an interesting perspective on things because like he appeals to the nerd in me because he'll talk about like nerdy crap that I like, but at the same time he's got a background in finance, and when he was growing up, he worked in restaurants. When he was in high school and college, he worked in restaurants. His father was a restaurant manager.
I think a lot of people, I think, work a stint in restaurants. Once we get, sorry to interrupt you, but in a minute, I have some questions I threw on the Instagram stories today, and I'm going to share some of the viewer and listener feedback on those. But I think almost the majority of the people that I know at some point in time have worked in a restaurant or in the food and beverage industry. So sorry.
Well, and that was kind of his point. He talked about how, like, when he was growing up in the 80s, he's probably a little bit older than you or I, but not by much, probably within 2 or 3 years of our age. And he was talking about how, like, his father worked for a restaurant and he was the manager of what eventually became like the Outback Steakhouse chain, but this was back in the 80s, so whatever it was.
Okay.
And he said that his dad made like $50,000 or $60,000 a year during the 80s. And he's like, that was pretty good money back then. And like we were able to afford a house, and like the house that we bought probably cost us $80,000 to $100,000 back in the 80s, which if you think about in terms of how many years of his salary that was, is like maybe 2 years of his salary, if that. Yeah. And he says that same restaurant manager position today probably pays $50,000 or $60,000. Exactly. And houses are now like that same house that they bought in the 80s would probably be $300,000 to $400,000 today. So you're looking at best case scenario 7 to 8 times what your salary is compared to 1.5 to 3 times. And that's not to talk about the like if your wages in 85 were 50,000 and your wages in 2021 are 50,000, well, factor in inflation and you're taking like a 50 or 60% pay cut. And he was also talking about how the restaurant industry and the service industry is a jumping off point for so many people in so many different careers, because it teaches you things that you're not going to learn in other industries. And he's looked at not just what happened in the last 18 months or so because of coronavirus in restaurants, but also just the general trend in restaurants of paying less and like if you're a server, the various tip outs that you have to do, and how restaurants have found a way of being able to reduce their own payroll liabilities by getting the staff to pay other staff instead of the restaurant paying staff.
Well, yeah, let's visit that in a second. But I like what you just said, that a lot of people have used the food and beverage industry as a springboard for later on in their career, because they're sustainable for whatever their lifestyle is when they're working at that restaurant, be that at 18 or 20 or even 30 years old. But they're gaining skills and they're able to support themselves over the amount of time that they're working there.
and use it as a springboard into wherever their career may take them from there. But I don't know exactly the terminology they use, but that's what the metaphor meant in my head. And now I think it's barely a stepping stone, because for a lot of people who are working in that industry, they're barely making enough to get by.
I would agree.
Yeah. So I don't, you can't live a sustainable life when you're working at a restaurant and then working at another restaurant, or working at a restaurant and then another job, and you're working 10, 12 hours a day just to get by. You don't have that free time in your schedule to devote towards finding another job or adding other activities that you could pad your resume with. You're just working 12 hours a day to get by, and that's not, there's no springboard in that. Because
for a lot of people, like the way that it would go would be restaurant jobs, primarily you work evenings, because that's when most people, like, sure, there's going to be lunch and breakfast places, but most restaurants make most of their money during the dinner hours. So that's when a lot of the hours to be filled are. And so if you want to go to school for something and you need to support yourself, then a restaurant job makes a lot of sense, because you can go to school in the morning, come back, have lunch, do some homework, and then go to work. And then you'll be back home by like 11 or 12 o'clock, which is not an unreasonable hour if you don't have to be up until like 8 or 8:30 the next day. So you can do both school and restaurant work, but that's really contingent on the restaurant being able to pay enough that you can support yourself on that job. And it used to work pretty well, and it's a lot harder these days.
Yeah. Well, when you were talking about the wage, I was making some notes when you were talking about the wages not really rising in restaurants. And the thinking in my head was that there's a huge amount of restaurants that are super cheap, like unbelievable, that you see ads on TV for Fridays or Applebee's where they're telling you can basically be in and out the door at $12 a head, which is insane. To me, it's like the McDonald's dollar menu has had the same items on it for the last 2 decades, which is changing now. Now they have a value menu for most cases, but
there's a lot less stuff that you can get for $1 at McDonald's now.
Yeah, but the point is, a lot of restaurants have stayed very inexpensive to keep people eating there. They've kept the consumer pricing pretty low. All right, Rosh has got Italian people call coming back for lunch siesta, and it's usually not for doing homework. Okay. All right, so tell me more about what you're learning from this guy.
Well, he was talking about how he the trend that he sees, that he hopes doesn't happen, but he thinks is likely, is that a lot of restaurants are looking at some of the models that we've already seen debuted with, like kiosks and touch screens to do your own ordering and everything like that. And restaurant owners are looking at that as an opportunity for them to cut costs. Because if you have a decent system, you make a one-time investment, and then it's basically free for the rest of the restaurant. And so you don't have to be paying somebody who might make mistakes, but they're just going to be costing money the whole time. You buy the kiosk, and people just do their own ordering. And so he thinks that you're not only going to see that more commonly, but you're also going to start seeing like much more automation in both the preparation and the delivery of food within a restaurant.
So what's this guy's name? Just credit where credit's due.
The YouTube channel is Alpha Investments.
And what's the guy's name?
Rudy.
Does he have a last name, or he's just Rudy of Alpha Investments?
That's what he goes by. I'm sure he has a last name. I'm not aware of it.
So,
I'd recommend people listen to the video that he posted about restaurants. It went up like a day or two ago.
But that's where we're going with this conversation today. And I've outlined a whole bunch of challenges to the restaurant industry, and owning a restaurant, and what it's like working in a restaurant, and the difficulties with being a waiter, waitress, or working behind the bar. But I think really what our focus is on is that over the next few years, we're going to see an incredible amount of automation that is very challenging to the restaurant industry. I was in LaGuardia Airport 2 or 3 years ago, and there was a little like sushi bar slash restaurant. And I walked up, I sat at the bar. There was like one other person at the bar. It was a pretty empty restaurant. And there's an iPad on the table in front of me. And I just sat there and waited and waited and waited. The waiter kind of walked around. He talked to like somebody out on the restaurant floor, asked the other guy at the other end of the bar something. And he was too far away. I couldn't really get his attention. Finally, after being there for like 10 minutes, the guy, and I had time to burn, which is why I'm sitting at a restaurant, LaGuardia Airport. Finally, the guy comes in within earshot of me, and I kind of wave and say, "Excuse me," get his attention. And I said, "Hey, I just was hoping to order a quick drink. Is that all right?" And he just pointed to the iPad. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Nobody works here. You're just delivering food. Nobody works here." And I just instantly had a bad taste in my mouth and was like, "Fuck! Like I don't want to be here." And since then, I've been to a handful of other airports where basically all the seating area is just covered in touchscreen tablets, and that's how you order is through the tablets. I really don't like it, and I'm sure a lot of people really do like it.
I'll tell you where I do like it. Fast food. Like Taco Bell has been doing this a lot more back when like you still walked into a restaurant to order, because like a lot of places like still are only like drive-through only. But like the touch screens at Taco Bell where you can just kind of like say, all right, this is what I want. And like you can, and like you're guaranteed to not have your order screwed up because it shows up right in front of you and you're the one who did it. And it's quicker because you like there's less of a line, if any line at all. And like when I go to a place like Taco Bell or McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever, I'm not going there for a dining experience. I'm going there because I need food and I need it quickly, and I have already decided I don't really care about the nutrition.
Fair enough. Okay. Where are we drawing that line though? Because are you drawing that line at Fridays?
Well, I wouldn't go to a Fridays. or really any of those, like Fridays, Applebee's, Ruby Tuesday, any of like those kind of bottom tier chain restaurants, I just wouldn't go to.
But I feel like a couple years ago, we went to this haunted house up in upstate New York. So it was like an hour and a half away. A bunch of friends, Adam went up. We drove up, and on the way either up or back, we stopped at an Outback Steakhouse, thinking like, well, there's a group of us. There's not like independent restaurants, pretty much what's up here, chain restaurants. And I had a really bad experience. I was like, the food is terrible. I'm getting like a 24-ounce Jack and Coke with like one shot of Jack Daniels and 20 something ounces of Coca-Cola, or probably 15 ounces, a whole bunch of ice. And it was just across the board a bad experience, food and service wise. And that happened a few years ago. And then since I moved to Jersey, there's a whole bunch more of these chain restaurants around. So I said, you know what, let me try a Fridays. It was one of those nights where there was no food in the house, and restaurant made sense, but kind of short on time. And I'm like, you know what, I haven't been to a Fridays in probably 15 years. And I mean, that's a pretty accurate guess. Probably before we lived in South Carolina was the last time I went to Fridays. I went into this Fridays. It seemed like there was 3 people working there, and there was nobody behind the bar. There was a host and some people that went in and out of the kitchen here and there. The service was terrible because there was nobody around. We were served with plastic silverware. Somehow, my guess is that had something to do with coronavirus. But
yeah, which doesn't make any sense, but whatever.
Doesn't make any sense because you're washing the silverware. And the food that we got, the only thing I could compare it to is when somebody buys frozen food in the grocery store and then reheats it in their microwave or in the oven.
Fridays makes frozen food that you can buy in the grocery store.
Which is exactly what I realized, is that for product consistency, they're serving me the exact same thing, and it's probably comes in the same bag, just more items in the bag in a freezer pack. It's served to me in the restaurant, comes out of an unbranded box in a plastic wrapper, and in the grocery store it comes in a branded box in a plastic wrapper.
Yeah, probably the only difference would be that like if you get like a burger and fries or like I don't know chicken fingers or something like that, like that they might actually drop the stuff into a deep fryer instead of in a microwave or an oven. But
If you were lucky, yeah, I'm sure.
I'm saying maybe, I don't know. The last time I was in a Fridays was probably about 12 years ago, which it was while you were still living in South Carolina.
Yeah, bad food. And I just thought like this was a cool spot. Like I remember it like being kind of a place that, you know, would be cool. It was somewhat unique. But now it's just, you know, there's one every 15, 20 miles and, you know, in and around every city. It's all the same. And it's just not cool. But let's talk a little bit more about how we see challenges that automation is bringing to the restaurants.
Well, so here's one that Alpha Investments mentioned last night. He said, like, even things that you didn't think could be replaced, he's seeing replaced. And the example is bartending, where it's not that difficult to have a robotic bartender where like you punch in your order of like the various cocktails that are on the menu, or like if you want a highball like Jack and Coke or something like that, whatever. But basically you could just have a machine that's loaded up with various liquors, and like it's got a recipe where it's okay, an ounce and a half of this, an ounce of this, an ounce of this, mixer, ice, pour it all into a glass, and then just have like a little stir rod that goes through and stirs it, and there's your drink.
Dude, did I tell you about the faucet that I wanted to buy for the kitchen?
Maybe.
Yeah, so I bought this faucet. It's by Moen, and I can just say, "Hey Moen, give me 3/4 of a cup of water at 92 degrees." And then it says, "Wave your hand over." It says, "Ready, wave your hand over when you're ready for me to dispense," something along those lines. So if my home faucet can do that, I imagine that you can build the technology into a bar where all the bottles are just upside down on a bunch of tubes, and it pours the bottle in whatever quantity you want, in whatever order you want. And I'm sure you can come up with an apparatus to mix it and add some damn ice. And
yeah, it would be very easy.
And that wipes bartenders off the planet entirely.
Yeah, and from a restaurant owner, you can look at it as this is two advantages. One is I don't have to pay a bartender, and two, I have virtually perfect portion control on every single drink, where the bartender's never over pouring.
Yeah, there's no free shots, no drinks slip under the table, no 20s slip under the register. And I could see that being a major upside for a restaurant owner with a certain perspective. But also, as far as I'm concerned, that takes so much out of going to a bar.
It's not, to me, it's not a bar anymore.
Well, you lose that. Why do you go to a bar? Because you want to get drunk, or because you want to get out, maybe be around other people and have a bit of exposure to, you know, just other people, really.
Yeah, but the bartender to me makes up a good portion of the experience. Like,
yeah, 100%. I completely agree.
A good bartender can turn an average night into a great night just by doing their job well.
Yeah. Because depending on the bartender, but yeah, they're there to talk to you and I don't want to sound too sad, but provide you some company and some levity. And they're also,
but if you're out on a date, like the bartender can kind of help grease the wheels a little bit in terms of like picking out a good drink for either you or your date. They like, if they need to, they can like sometimes interject and get the conversation going again. Like bartenders, a good bartender will know when to step in and help out and when to stay away and let you do your thing.
So then what happens to waiters and waitresses? And bartenders, they just become a novelty. Like a Hooters.
Yeah.
They're only there to add, you know, whatever to the experience, but they're completely superfluous. They're not needed at all. When you're done checking your email.
No, I'm looking at Rosh sent a link for a premium cocktail and margarita machine for a home bar, and it's like a single press kind of thing. But like, So $350 for something super basic. If you're running a restaurant, you could probably get something for $2,000 or $3,000, if not a little bit more. Which, if you think about it, how long does it take for you to recover that cost in labor? And the answer is not very long.
Well, also, I imagine in the beginning, just like any product, they'll have something like this that costs $300 or $2,000, but down, within a year or two, they'll have some monstrosity that costs $10,000 and does it perfect, or costs $25,000 and does it perfect. But then in 3 or 4 years, that product is now down closer to $1,000. And I think it's very likely. And I think we lose a lot of, I mean, I can tell you, when I found out that there was no bartender, it was just me sitting at a bar in front of an iPad, surrounded by, some raw fish. I was out. I was checked out. I did not want to be at that bar in the airport. I was looking around for some other place to sit, because sitting by myself having a drink, which was my plan to begin with, but there was supposed to be some type of bartender there.
So Rosh asked the question, why would this be any different from a candy or coffee vending machine? And the difference is, if I go to a store and buy candy, like I go to a CVS or whatever and I want to get a Snickers, or I buy it from a vending machine, in both cases, I'm not really looking to interact with the party that I'm buying from.
But is that what we're looking for at a bar, is to interact with someone?
Yeah, that's the reason why you go to a bar.
I don't think that's why you go to a bar, though. I think that's part of it, and then you wouldn't go if it wasn't like that.
I don't know. There's like a novelty factor to it, where like if you had a bar where the whole vibe was that we've got this robotic bartender, and you really build the bar around that, and you make that part of the bar, and you make that part of the experience, it could work. But that's kind of an edge case.
I very quickly see this happening. I see this happening very quickly. I really think that with the increase in labor costs, a lot of restaurants are going to say, we can't serve you a $12 or $14 burger. That burger has either got to cost $25, because restaurants don't get by on huge profit margins, and everybody is looking for a piece of the pie. Think about the meal delivery services like Grubhub and Uber Eats and the others. They're all taking a big chunk.
I think it's like a 30 or 33% cut off the top from the restaurant. So if it's if you've got a $10 dish, like if Grubhub charges you $10 for it, then the restaurant's probably only getting $7.
Yes, and then you're not only paying $10 to Grubhub, you're also paying whatever service fee and the tip to the delivery guy.
Right. That's just like if you see a dish on Grubhub for $10, like obviously there's going to be costs after that $10, but of that $10, probably only about $7 is going to the restaurant.
I actually ordered some food on Seamless I think last week. I wish I could pull it up. I ended up paying way more than the cost of the item did. Damn it, I'm not going to be able to find it. But
all right. So moving forward with this, though, in terms of like the restaurant experience for both the patron and the employee, like I really don't know what's going to happen, because a lot of people have the same attitude that you and I do, which is that if we go to a restaurant, we're looking to have the experience of having a server or a bartender there, because that's part of what we expect from a restaurant. So you might see more pushback on this, but at the same time, COVID has really forced people to reevaluate their expectations on things. And then another question is, like, we hear all the time about unemployment statistics and how you've got all these people that are unemployed, and then you've got all these job vacancies that employers say that they can't fill. And you have to ask, why is it that all these people that could go back to work are choosing not to? And I don't think it's as simple as saying they're still getting unemployment. I think a lot of people are saying...
Hold up, though. I also think they don't have to go back to work. So I think if they had to go back to work, people would get a bit more desperate. But we're at a point in this country where people don't have to work. Just sharing that. I see a lot of people that just don't have to work and are getting by. But
yeah, it's complicated, but
it is. But yeah, I don't think. I think it's multifaceted here. Is that yes, there's a decent amount of people that don't have to work for whatever reason, but they're not being compelled to work at $7 an hour or $9 an hour.
yeah. But for a lot of people are looking at restaurant work now and saying, you know what, for the amount of work that goes into it and what you expect from me as an employee and the way that I'm treated by some patrons and everything, that amount of pay just doesn't cut it anymore.
Well, there's a lot of jobs that really don't exist in the United States anymore for citizens, for people that were born on U.S. soil. Like, think about how many, American people that were born here that pick fruits and vegetables or work on assembly lines and things like that. You don't have a lot of.
Assembly line's different. I'd say like meat packing and slaughterhouses, picking fruit.
I don't think you have a lot of American people working in these in meat packing slaughterhouses or in the
no, you don't.
In the garment industry. I work in the garment district in New York City, and you go to half of these buildings, and a lot of them still have manufacturing on in the buildings, a heavy amount of it, and the elevator opens up on a floor that's not the one you're going to, which is probably a regular real estate business in my line of work, and the elevator doors open, and it's a bunch of Asian people working behind sewing machines in most of the cases. But a lot of those people were not born in the U.S. and these are the jobs that they're getting. So the point that I'm seeing is it's not like 7 Asian people and like 3 white dudes.
Let's hit up the questions that you asked and see what people had to say.
All right, let's see what I got here. So I threw a few questions out there. What has it been like working in the food and beverage industry in the last 18 months? Bear in mind, I only put these up an hour ago or so. But I got unpredictable, sad yet hopeful, better, now stronger. And that's from Christina Orso. I'm not sure what city she's in. And then from Gapote, a lot of times back, people assume it's because everything is open and it's going to be like before COVID. I don't know exactly what that means. Next question was, has the restaurant industry changed since COVID, for better or for worse? And I got 11 say for the better, 12 say for the worse. So 48% better, 52 worse. Are you afraid of automation in the food and beverage industry? 46% say yes, 54% say no.
I wonder if of those respondents, how many work in the food and bev industry?
Yeah, I'm not 100% on who's on what side of that. All right, let's go back to the next question here. What would you change about how the industry is run? I got waiters and waitresses should be paid much more than they are, from MJ. And then let's see. I put up a sign that says, sorry, we're short staffed. Please be patient with the staff that did show up to work today. And then food and beverage a career? 58% say yes. 42% say no, just for now.
It's tough to make a career out of food and bev.
But that's the point, is that today it's almost, you're talking about somebody making 60 grand in the 80s, and that same job is making 60 grand now. But also, what I said was, what's the cost of a plate of food at that restaurant or a similar restaurant?
Well, and to be fair, some of the problems that restaurants face is most restaurants don't own the building or the property in which they're located. And so rental and lease costs have gone way up. food costs in the last year and a half have gone way up, but like food costs always go up, but they've gone up even faster in the last year and a half. Staffing costs have gone up, probably not as much as they should have. And so the question is, when you're a restaurant, like, are you pricing your food appropriately? And to your point about $12 like 3-course meals, or like $15 3-course meals or whatever, like, is that sustainable? Is that something that a restaurant can actually make a profit on? Or where are they cutting corners to be able to afford to offer that kind of a price?
I don't know what the rest of the world is like, but I can tell you in Manhattan, you go out and you get an entree for less than $20. That's very cheap. You get a beer for less than $8 or $9. That's very cheap. You get a cocktail for less than $15. That's very cheap. Most of the restaurants I go into for a glass of wine, you're close to about $20. And a lot of times it goes in multiples of that from there. When I go outside of New York City to restaurants, I am always surprised by how cheap things are. I went out to a restaurant on Saturday night expecting the bill to be in New Jersey, expecting the bill to be $300 or so, and just from what I'm used to in New York City, and it was about a buck and a half, which I was just like, oh shit, that's way cheaper than I would have thought. And actually the bar staff took very good care of us, experimented with some drinks, made 3 or 4 drinks that were not on the bill, and experimented and gave us not just a taste, but a full cocktail. So
most restaurants like make their profit is in drinks. So like as a percentage of the total cost, do you know like the general rules for food costing and booze costing?
No, I have no idea, but I do know that if I am not drinking, my bill is very, very, very fractional compared to when I am having some drinks.
So most restaurants, food costs are usually 30 to 33% of the bill. So if you're charging $10 for a dish, your food cost going into that dish will be $3 to $3.30.
Okay.
So booze costs for beer is usually 20 to 25%. Wine is usually 15 to 20%, and then liquor is somewhere between 12 and 18%.
Okay, that's reasonable. So you're making a lot more. You're making way more money on the.
Yeah, your profit margin on booze is way higher. And so, I mean, you can just think about this intuitively. So, like, for example, if a restaurant buys a case of beer, not a keg or anything like that, a case of beer, let's say a 24-pack of Budweiser or whatever, the price that they're paying from their distributor is almost exactly the same price as if you were to walk into a grocery store and buy that same case of beer. They're not getting like significant discounts wholesale on the beer. So if you figure a 24-pack of Budweiser might cost you $20 in the grocery store, so it's going to cost the restaurant about the same thing. So we'll round numbers up and say that each beer costs the restaurant $1. And how much would you expect to pay for a bottle of Budweiser in your average restaurant in New York City?
$6 to $7.
Right. So do the math.
Yeah, you're making a 600% profit there.
Yeah. And so that's where restaurants make a lot of their money, is on the alcohol sales. It's tough for a restaurant to make money purely on food. They can. There's some restaurants that specialize in it, but those are also the restaurants where you're doing where a 4-course meal costs you $300.
Yeah, which there are a lot of restaurants in Manhattan like that as well. And then, of course, you had booze on top of that, and you're spending a lot of money.
Sure, but if you're in a restaurant that can get customers to pay $300 for just the food, then yeah, you can make your profits on the food. But at the same time, you're probably paying an executive chef a whole bunch of money, but the line cooks and the sous chefs aren't making very much.
True. Let me just hit a few more of these comments before this thing times out of me. Are you a good tipper? I have 93% say 93% say yes, 7% say no. So I'm actually surprised.
What I would like to know, all right, so 93% of people think they're good tippers. What I would love to get is from the food and bev people, how many guests do you have that you would consider good tippers? And I guarantee you it's not 93%.
Yeah, exactly. I agree as well. Do you worry about your safety when you dine out, COVID or otherwise? 26% say yes. So that means 26% of people are in fear while they're eating.
Well, those 20% probably just shouldn't be going out. If you're in fear of your safety for COVID exposure or otherwise, then don't go out. That's why I don't go out. It's like I don't really want to be in a group of people. I'm vaccinated, but I still don't want to be around people that could have COVID. Why bother?
I'm not concerned with that at all. Do I tip well? 89% said yes. 11% said no. Let me see if any of these people have ever. No, none of these people have ever served me or been tipped by me. However, one of them has had me cover the bill many, many times. So that's it's a slap in the face right there. And then let's see. All right, and that's basically all I have on that. No, there was something you said a minute ago that I really wanted to comment on. Fuck. I'll remember that in a second. Where were we otherwise?
I don't know. I want to ask you this question, which is, if the trend in restaurants is towards more automation and less people are interested in working these jobs, and it becomes harder and harder to make money in restaurants, what does that mean longer term? How does that affect the kind of career train that, like, you can support yourself working in the service industry and then eventually move into something else if you want? But if you take that option away, where does that leave people? What are they going to be able to do?
Well, I think right now, I think over the next decade, we're going to see a crazy boom in AI. Okay. And I think that's going to come with some processing power and some data storage, and just really what's holding AI back is a bit of math and just data aggregation, right? Like some cool math that's going to allow it to just think in smart, intuitive ways, and then just the data that it needs to add up, right? Like training a robot to recognize what a leaf is going to take a lot of time. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to see AI make a couple of leaps over the next 10 years. And
it already has in the last 10 years, and that's only accelerating.
But the point that I make is, yes, exactly. That curve is going to accelerate. And what we're going to see with each of those jumps is a series of careers just get washed away. And I think that, I think some of them will stick around just for novelty's sake. But when you can have a machine pour and make drinks better than someone, why do you have that person there? And I'm having a difficult time articulating, other than the fact I like to talk with a bartender who, if I'm sitting at a bar over the course of 3 hours, may have a conversation with me in total for 4 minutes. So
one thing is, like, if you've got AI or whatever, you're not going to be able to have a conversation with the bartender and say, hey, this is a drink that I like, but I'm looking for something a little bit different. Can you come up with a drink that's kind of similar to that? Or, like, to be able to improvise and make something new for each customer. And I know not every bar does that, but for the bars that do, that's something that it would be virtually impossible for AI to replace.
On Saturday night, I'm chilling at the bar, and there was a bit of a lull. The seats on either side of me were open, but there was still, a dozen people at the bar. And I said, hey, what are you doing with those pink peppercorns? And the guy said, you know what? I haven't touched them. He turned to the other bartender. He goes, what are we doing with the pink peppercorns? He goes, I thought they looked good, so I threw them up there. And I said, well, if you got a minute, let's, you want to come up with something? And he goes, I'm game if you are. And I said, well, I'm looking at the pink peppercorn. I'm thinking maybe a gin drink and maybe you have fresh basil back there. And he goes, matter of fact, we grow all sorts of shit on the roof. I said, no way. He's telling me all the shit they grow on the roof. So I said, all right, my contribution is some type of gin and basil. And what he did was he muddled the peppercorns, muddled a bit of basil in there, some gin, some Campari. He strained it, threw some peppercorns on the top, slapped the glass with some basil to kind of get some aroma out of the basil, threw the basil on the top as a garnish. Phenomenal drink. Now, obviously, that's a scenario that could never happen with a robotic bartender or a machine that you're ordering from. But is the value, the last time I made up a drink at a bar, a few years ago. So, is there that much utility in having that bartender?
I don't know.
What do you think? What do you think of the drink, though?
I'm not a big fan of Amaros, so like Campari does nothing for me.
Well, it was good. It was mostly there for
Yeah, like me, my family of drinks, my favorite family has been sours, and it always has been.
All right. I don't think there was. We might have had a little. No, I don't think there was any lemon in that. I don't know. I forget.
I would think that a little bit of lemon juice and a dash of simple, although like Campari does have a little bit of sugar in it.
Yeah, there might have been a little lemon juice, but I don't know. It was Saturday night. I'd thrown a few back at that point. All right. I felt like I interrupted you again. By all means.
No. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with like if restaurant jobs become less appealing or less available. I really don't know what that's going to do for younger people that are looking to have a job that, because another thing that restaurant jobs offer that we haven't really touched on is networking, where you're meeting not only the coworkers that you have, but like especially if you're a bartender, but to some degree a server. If you've got regulars, then you're building a relationship with them, and that might be the door to a different industry.
Dude, the kid at the German restaurant downstairs from my office, which a day or two a week I drop by and just get a salad and a pint of beer and get a little work done in private, then go back to the office. The kid at the bar, he goes, "Hey, Justin, you're never going to believe this." I'm like, what's up? He goes, this morning there was a guy in here. He works for some financial company. I don't remember the name. And he goes, he just hooked me up with an internship for next semester. Exactly what you're talking about. So, but look, I typically, I'm pretty regular at one of these Chase offices near my office. And I noticed that they have maybe 9 teller windows. And 3 or 4 years ago, they slapped 2 giant robotic RoboCop looking ATMs directly in front of 2 of the teller windows, which I thought was an interesting placement of the ATMs, because I'm like, you're just taking away 2 jobs and you've literally just stuck this gigantic ATM. And it's an ATM that like, touchscreen ATM, and it'll give you 1s and 5s. And I don't think it gives you change, but it's, it's a state.
It's more than just 20s and like make a withdrawal.
Yeah. And there's, now when I go there and I need to see the teller, which is most of the time, I got to wait in line for the one teller that's there. And God forbid somebody has a transaction, with more than 1 check or whatever it is. Somebody's got a complicated transaction. I got to wait for them to like, some manager will run around the back and try to tag somebody else. Hey, can you go take another window? So, the ATMs are taking over the bank jobs. And I heard somebody in my office saying, hey, all those banks that closed during coronavirus, a lot of those guys didn't open back up because the banks found out that they're doing just fine closing half of their branches.
I can speak to the truth on that. So my main bank account's with Bank of America. And the reason why when I moved to South Carolina, I opened up a Bank of America account because there was a Bank of America a half mile from my apartment. And I was like, this is the most convenient place. I'm just going to go with this because I only have to drive 2 minutes. Now that bank is 3 miles away, but it's still a pretty convenient trip. Since coronavirus started, that branch hasn't been open. And a number of other branches in Charleston, like the times that I need to go to the bank, I have to go online and figure out which branches in Charleston are open. The last time I went to the bank, I had to drive 25 minutes. I'm pretty ticked about it. But Bank of America is just like, yo, turns out we don't need to have any of these branches open.
Wild. But yeah,
And I'm pissed about it
but
because I can't do mobile deposit. My phone can't do it.
but everybody else's phone can do it.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah,
until
I get
BlackBerry gets their shit together, I'm stuck with the phone I have.
Yeah, but but the bank is making just as much money, and James, maybe make an app that locates all the banks nearby. Yeah, that's called Google.
Yeah, no, I can look it up. It's just annoying because like I want to go to the branch that that is closest to me because it was open when I chose to open the account. Keep the branch open.
Yeah, it's not an issue, Rosh, of locating the nearby banks. It's an issue of having nearby banks that are close enough.
Yeah, and it's also like it's not just any bank. It has to be a Bank of America that has teller service because I need to have someone that can actually take a check from me.
Well, you can't put the check in the ATM?
No. I don't have a debit card.
Why don't you have a debit card?
Because I've never needed one.
How do you not? Your bank account doesn't come with a debit card?
It might have. They said they sent one to me, but I never got it. And I was just like, I don't need this. Because, like, refereeing provides me with cash. So if I ever need cash, I'm just like, all right, cool. I got money saved up from refereeing. And if I ever need to pay with something, I pay with my credit card. And I pay the balance down every single month. It's a system that works perfectly fine.
It's a good system. And it's better to not. I don't actually carry a debit card around with me. I have the company debit card, but that's because I go to the bank to deposit checks and make certified checks and things like that. But personally, I don't carry a debit card with me. I put everything on credit cards. So
yeah, I run everything on a credit card because I get better rewards on my credit card than I would ever get with a debit card.
Yeah, those of you out there that pay with debit cards, you are missing out on one, having almost all of your purchases protected. If you go to a store and you buy something and you walk out to the parking lot and somebody snags it from you and runs away with it, most of the time your credit card has purchase insurance. Also, you're getting points on each of those purchases. And sure, it may not be too much money, but it's more than zero, which is typically the case with your debit card.
Yeah, I just cashed out like $600 and something from my credit card rewards, and that's tax-free money.
Is it tax-free?
Yeah, it's definitely tax-free.
Nice, that's good. I'm working on my credit card points. So I use most of the time I use it for travel because they give you like 1.5 times or 2 times the points, which is nice. And also another thing about credit cards is when I travel, I have 3 or 4 different credit cards that give me free like travel. So up to one card, 2 of the Amexes I have give me up to $200 in travel like rewards. So if I buy in-flight beverages or I upgrade a flight or I change seats and it costs money, each one of those gives me $200 back. And the Chase, what is it called? The Chase Sapphire gives me up to $300 back. And it can be literally anything at the airport or in the flight, which is really, really cool. And that's just free money.
Yeah.
So to me, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, as long as you pay off your balance every single month, you're not incurring interest charges or finance charges or anything. Like if you can run 100% of your costs through your credit card and pay the balance off every single month, you're earning money back basically for free.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Now, your waiters and wait staff typically prefer being tipped in cash. Just a heads up to everybody.
Yeah, for 2 reasons. The first is that I've never met a waiter that declared their cash tips completely accurately. So it means that like if you're tipping in cash, the waiters are keeping some of that money tax free, which is totally.
And James is an accountant, but what were you going to say, which is totally why.
When I was working as an accountant and also working as a bartender, like I still underdeclared my cash tips because it's just something that happens in the industry.
We're
So
not recording this. Don't worry.
I don't really care. Like, and also like for credit cards, most restaurants, like, so there's a credit card processing fee that every retailer is going to have to pay, and it's usually somewhere between like 2 and 3.5%.
Yeah.
And so when you get a credit card tip, the restaurant has to pay on that tip. They're getting processing fees on that tip. So usually restaurants will charge that percentage back to the server for the credit card fee. So if you tip $10 on your bill, then your waiter's going to have to pay probably 30 or 40 cents back to the restaurant to cover that portion of the credit card fee. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but like that's a 2 to 3% reduction in your salary before taxes.
Dude, I every month we get thousands of dollars in terminal charges, which are that 2.5 to 3.5%, depending on the card type, depending on the transaction. If the card's not present, it's like the max. And people don't get it. I'm like, no, you got to, if I'm taking money that needs to be turned over to another party, so say I'm taking $4,000 and I have to pay $4,000 to the next party, but that terminal is going to charge me 3%, I have to charge an extra $120. Otherwise, I don't have that $4,000 at the end of the day to turn back over to that third party. So we got to add it in there. I'm doing you a service in basically changing the hands of the money. So, I know that one thing I wanted to add. Oh damn, I gotta pull up the name. But was it Ariana who joined us from Ariana from Drinks First? She had one of her episodes. She was talking with a guy that owns a few clubs in Manhattan, and he was talking about tippets from bartenders. And I meant to bring it up in the podcast with her and just say, hey, you guys didn't do a good job in your episode of explaining what a tippet is. But it's when a bartender gets you a drink and basically says, hey, you've been, I gave you 4 Jack and Cokes. Here's a 5th one on me. Tip it back.
Yeah, exactly. It's the drink isn't truly free. It's like,
well, it is
the bartender up.
It is to the people that don't understand what a tippet drink is. So if you're spending $12 on a drink and the bartender, if you order the drink and the bartender says, tip it back, I took care of it on the check for you, it means that your tip has to increase by $12.
Yeah. When I was a bartender, I engaged in that practice, but I never asked for it. I just assumed that the people understood what was going on.
Well, usually they don't, and they still just give you a generous tip because you were nice to them, but they don't tip in an excess amount of that beverage. So I'm sharing this for the podcast world and for you guys on Instagram and you guys on TikTok. When the bartender buys your drink, it usually means that you have to tip in that amount. Now, if the bartender throws you a free shot, that's different than a tippet. That's him just hooking you up, in my opinion. Yeah. But if they're like, this one's on me, it means that you need to then pay for it.
Yeah.
And usually they will use that phrase, this one's on me, not tip it back to me.
No, I did use that phrase sometimes.
On me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And it just means you're putting your job on the line a little bit. All right, what do we miss on restaurants? We really didn't talk about the difficulties in running a restaurant. We talked a little bit about what AI and automation is posing a threat to the restaurant industry. We talked a little bit about coronavirus and how that's affected restaurants. And I feel bad because, like you said, restaurants operate a lot on profit a lot on their drinks. And when people are just ordering out food, I could sit at a bar for 3 hours and order 5 or 6 drinks, or sometimes more, and sit at a bar for a little bit longer. And that's going to add up, and it's going to add up and add up. If I order out, even if which New York City did for a little while, allow you to take out beverages, I wasn't ordering 6 or 7 drinks with my takeout order. I was ordering like a quart of old fashioned or something like that, which is a quart of old fashioned, by the way, it's a lot of old fashioned.
It is.
It's your large Chinese soup container. Oh man, what am I missing here as we wind out?
I don't know. I say I think we can wrap on this and then see where the comments fall, address them on Thursday, and then start with a fresh topic after that.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty solid idea. I think we got to incorporate a little more with the current food and beverage, the current people who are waiters and bartenders. I'll work to do a little bit to get some of these guys to
Yeah,
join
if
the
anyone's
conversation.
listening who is currently working in restaurants or whatever and wants to join in for a spell, we'd be happy to hear your opinions and have you live.
My thinking is it's a pretty abysmal time over the last 18 months to be involved in the food and beverage industry, and I feel bad for the industry as a whole, for the owners, for the staff, and oftentimes for the patrons. We've seen in New York City a lot of our favorite restaurants disappear, which
There's
is
not really a winner here. That's the problem.
no, there's not, and and even the idea of getting in and out of a restaurant at $12 a head is not a win, because as we discussed, that's bad food. It's not good food. All right, thank you guys for joining us on Instagram. Thank you guys on TikTok. You're my eye line over here. We're out of time, but I want to thank you guys for joining. I want to thank Rosh Galeb in the background for feeding us your comments. Thank you, Rosh. Thank you, James. I'll see you guys next time. Adios. See ya.
All right, my friends, that concludes this episode. Do you agree? Were we too long-winded? What do you think of this episode? What do you think of all the episodes? What do you think of us? We want to know your opinions, as harsh and as crucial as they may be, and we want to know what you'd like to add. And on that note, it's over. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.